Hey guys, welcome to an early edition of the Fins Faithful podcast. As always, guys, we're live on X and on YouTube. And obviously, the big news this week is Tua is set to return this Sunday versus the Arizona Cardinals. Tua also spoke to the media, who my guest was there live. We'll discuss all things Tua plus the game. And like I mentioned, to help me preview that, I have Chris Perkins, who covers the Dolphins on a daily basis for the South Florida Sun Sentinel. Chris, good morning. Thank you so much, man, for hopping on. How are you?
Man, thanks for having me. I'm honored, man. I'm thrilled. I love doing podcasts, so this is great, man. Look, there's positivity, right? The Tua's coming back. We'll temper it a little bit because we know what defenses have been doing. But look, Tua's back, baby. So that's a good thing.
Yeah, I had your colleague, your buddy Alan Poupart on last week. He was great. So, all right.
Yeah, Poop. Yeah, he's good people.
Yeah, he is. All right. So I guess before we get to the Tua in the game, real quick, just recap your thoughts on last Sunday's loss to the Colts.
Well, here's my takeaway is that you this is not a running team. Okay, so you're not going to win games by running the ball. I know you had some good yards and the run game was fairly productive, but in the last two games, you've rushed for almost 400 yards. You have two touchdowns. So the run game should be there for balance. Now I know that you're having problems when Tua's not there getting the ball to Tyreek and Jalen Waddle. That's obvious. But to me, your identity is as a big play pass team. You've got to figure out a way to take those shots at key moments. And so what I would have liked to have seen more of was you run, get them to drop that eighth man into the box, and then you go over the top. If they don't do that, you still have to take your shots to Tyreek and Waddle in man-on-man coverage. And look, it's a tough thing for quarterbacks to come into this offense and have that timing. We've heard Darrell Bevel talk about when he's in practice, he's telling these quarterbacks, let it go, let it go, let it go. This is not normal for quarterbacks. It's not natural to be as quick as Tua, to make these reads as quickly as Tua, to throw it as accurately as Tua. It's hard. And Tua even talked about it, that it's tough for a quarterback to just come into this offense. They've done dozens and dozens and hundreds of reps, him and Jalen Waddle, him and Tyreek. That timing is impeccable. But you've got to be able to go over the top. You've got to be able to take shots because that's how you score points, and that's how this team wins games.
Yeah, I agree. And it's kind of on film, you see the plays are there. But like you said, for whatever reason, probably those reasons you mentioned, the quarterback, Huntley, and even Boyle, they're holding on to the ball. I kind of relate it to it's like a play. You rehearse the main, and all of a sudden the day before the main character goes out, it's not going to run the same. They practice. It's from footwork to everything. This offense is built very clearly for one quarterback to run it. It's a blessing and it's a curse, but that was obvious. And to kind of close the book on the Colts game, I made the point on my last show. Look, this team caught breaks versus Jacksonville. That Holland fumble, great play, but still, it went their way. They were going to score. It would have been difficult the way even the offense is playing with Tua to get back in it. Then you fast forward to the Patriots game. Not only was Polk wide open, but Brissett threw it high. Everybody talks about the toe and the heel, but that was a bad throw. So they caught a break there. And as you know in sports, things tend to even out. And without Tua, this was a 2-4 team. They are what they are, right?
Yep.
What was the famous line? You are where your record is. And that's how I kind of see it to kind of close the book on that game. All right. Speaking of Tua, he spoke on Monday. I was, I happened to catch. I don't catch them all live, but I happened to catch that one live, Kirk. And I was kind of taken aback by how strong the message was. Right? I don't know if you want to call it defiant, angry, frustrated, all those words we can use. But it was clear he wanted to send a strong message, right? I took away from it that, look, this guy thought he could probably play the next week. And it was probably evident when you travel to Seattle. If you had any symptoms, you wouldn't be traveling on all the way across the country. He threw in, hey, I've been throwing for 5 weeks. He also didn't like to be the face of this NFL concussion thing that's going on now.
Right.
You were in the room. How was the vibe? How did you take his reaction? Kind of how do you think he handled that whole situation?
Oh, you're right. I mean, defiant, salty, irritated, agitated. I mean, Tua clearly did not want to be on that podium talking about his medical stuff, talking about being on IR, this, that, and the other. He was agitated. Let me just say this, George. I 100% support Tua. Like, he lived your best life. Like, he has all the medical evidence. He's talked to all the experts. There are no definite lines drawn between the concussions and CTE or the concussions and the long-term dementia risk. He's at risk, but we think and you can kind of surmise or reason or whatever, but there are no clear lines. Tua should live his best life. He discussed it with the family. He discussed it with the medical experts. Do what you want to do. Having said that, I do think that, and by the way, if he doesn't want to wear the Guardian cap, I'm fine with that also, because again, if you don't want to be the face of this, wearing that Guardian cap is going to remind people every time, oh yeah, he's a concussion risk. So I'm not mad at him for that. George, is going to be interesting when Tua has decisions to make, because we know how competitive Tua is, right? And pretty much anybody in the NFL, but Tua is a hyper-competitive quarterback. And so I think against Arizona, if you drop back and it's 3rd and 2, blah, 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 and nobody's open, I think it would be easy to throw it away or to kind of run out of bounds or whatever. In December, at Cleveland, at New York, when you've got 8 wins, 9 wins, the wild card is on the line, it's going to be kind of hard to harness that. I'll be very interested to see if he can control his competitive nature at that time, because for any athlete, and especially for a quarterback, that's a big test. So, I'm hoping that it goes very well for Tua, as we all are. But that's, to me, that's probably going to be one of the biggest tests is, when it gets into those crucial times in big games, it's going to be hard not to lower your head and go for that first down.
Yeah, I can imagine for him his whole life. He even said it in the press conference, right? This has been his edge, his competitive nature.
Yep.
To turn that switch off, I'd imagine that's going to be pretty tough for him to do. You would agree with that, huh?
Yeah, definitely. So, he's going to have to change his game to a certain extent. But, look, to me, here's going to be the big challenge. In Tua's last 8 starts, the Dolphins are 3-5. He has 8 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, and they're averaging 18.4 points per game. The 2 deep safety thing is real, that they are using this to keep those deep passes from going to Tyreek and Jalen Waddle, and it's been effective. In the Dolphins' last 17 games, they are 8-9. Last 10, they're 3-7. Last 5, they're 1-4. Teams are choking the life out of this offense. And I know you've had some injuries in that span, right? Obviously Tua with the concussion, and we're going back to Tyreek and the horse collar hip drop tackle against Tennessee. Jalen Waddle had the ankle. So there have been limitations, but they're choking the life out of this offense. And so I'll be interested to see how Tua can help that, because again, they weren't scoring a ton of touchdowns with Tua in there.
Oh, what's up, Magic City Don 1896 Vice? He's Mr. Optimism. We're going to 11-0. I'm not sure about that, but
I hope so.
It's easy for you to write, huh?
Yeah. Oh, dude, look, we would all be loving life at that point, man. I mean, look, I'll tell you this now. If you're a Dolphins media member, you want this team to do well because readership is up and the players are in a better mood. And Mike McDaniel is funny again. He wasn't very funny at 1-3. The jokes have kind of come back a little bit recently, but this hasn't been a very fun team to be around. And this is a very fun team. I love this locker room. I love this team. I've always I've said that 30 years in pro locker rooms, I'm going on 30 years in pro locker rooms. This is one of my favorite. It's a top 5, but I'm also going to point out their shortcomings. And what I say about this offense is I think it's about 2 things: Tyreek Hill and the threat of Tyreek Hill. Doesn't mean I don't like Mike McDaniel. Doesn't mean I'm anti-Tua. I'm calling it as I see it, and that's what I want to bring to fans. But I do like this team. I want this team to do well, but I'm always going to be honest with you about this team and what I see.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. All right, I guess let's get on to the game on Sunday, right? This looks to be a favorable matchup for the Dolphins offense and particularly Tua. If you look at the Cardinals, they did get a good win, physical win against the Chargers on Monday night. It's a short week for them. They got to travel cross country. And if you look at their secondaries banged up with Sean Murphy-Bunting is questionable. They got a bunch of young players back there. I believe I have this. I think they're 27th in total defense, 26 in run defense, 26 in pass, and dead last in third down defense. Is it as simple as we have the guy who now can get the ball back in Waddle and Hill's hands, and the defense continues to play as well as they have, and we see a big game the first game back in the passing game here?
It should be that, but it's more complicated than that. Again, I think you really do need to get that run-pass balance, see if you can get that eighth man in the box. Again, it's not going to be as simple as Tua is back, happy days are here again. They're choking the life out of this offense. Other teams know what to do, so you've got to be very deliberate. And Tua is obviously much better about hitting Waddle and Tyreek. But, Buffalo didn't allow that to happen, and Jacksonville didn't allow that to happen on a regular basis. You did have the 80 to Tyreek against Jacksonville and the 63 to Waddle, but that's got to be a more regular thing. And along with that, I love this defense is fourth in the NFL, and I love what Anthony Weaver is doing, but you would like to see this streak of 100-yard rushing teams in. All six opponents have rushed for over 100 yards, but I don't have a major problem with the defense. With Tua back, even still, clean up those penalties, right? You still, I know Tua's back, but you can't have all these penalties. I think the Dolphins lead the league penalties per game at 8.2 and holding. So you've got to clean all that stuff up. You've had some special teams things. We'll see what happens in the return game without Berrios. I guess Malik Washington, maybe Eskridge gets promoted and he handles some returns. It's not just as simple as Tua is back. That's a major thing, and that's where it's going to start. But you still have all this other stuff to clean up. So, we will see how it goes. I mean, I'm picking the Dolphins to win. They should win. I think they will win. But you still got other things you need to clean up as far as everything around Tua.
Yeah, you mentioned Berrios and the injury. You said Malik and probably maybe Eskridge. Yep. You see A-Chain maybe getting some touches back there? Because, the backfield, there's three. There's three backs back there. Maybe give him some touches in special teams.
Yeah, I think Jalen Wright might be a candidate also, probably maybe before HN, if considering the concussion and it's a way to get Wright probably more touches. I thought Wright should have got more touches coming out of the New England game, by the way. One of my takeaways from New England, if I'm not mistaken on my numbers, Jalen Wright 13 for 86, Raheem 15 for 80. I thought Jalen Wright ran between the tackles with more authority. He moved the pile. He really energized the offense. So I agree with his dad's tweet that he should, this kid needs to carry the rock a little bit more. I like what I see out of Jalen Wright, but yeah, I think, Jalen Wright could be back there, maybe a little more than Achane. I think Jalen Wright might be a return man candidate.
Yeah. Speaking of Jalen Wright, I can't figure out why he only had 5 touches and then waited to the second half to get him the ball. I thought he was the big reason why that running game got ignited the previous week. And everybody talked about Mostert coming back, but I thought, at times he looks like he's the best back on the team, Burke. Would you agree?
Yep, I would agree. And it's hard to kind of trust your eyes, right? Because this is a rookie, and we know what HN has done. We know what Mostert has done. And it's like, why would you go away from these dudes? They're money. Like HN and Mostert, we know what they can do, and this rookie is unproven, but this kid runs with authority, and he gives you a presence between the tackles, and that's something that you need, as well as that outside zone that HN and Mostert do more. He doesn't have to be the prime ball carrier, the starter, but look, I'm thinking I might rather give it to him on 3rd and 1 instead of Alec Ingold. And that's no disrespect to Alec Ingold. This dude is money. He happened to fumble, but Ingold is a quality player, a quality guy. But, I just think Jalen Wright at this point is probably a better option. He runs with authority and he kind of runs with a little anger to him.
Yeah, and speaking of Alec Ingold, like you said, he's converted a few times on 4th and 1,
Yep.
the fullback dive. But when it's in the 4th quarter, you're trying to take the lead. And Jalen Wright you waited too long, A, to get him in the game, and B, he had it going. I just can't for the life of me figure out why they didn't just give him the ball. I mean, it's just, we've had a few of those moments this season with Mike McDaniel, right?
Yeah. And you know what? It's, I'll tell you this about the run game also, that I haven't, finished my film study. Shame on me. But second half, if I'm not mistaken on my numbers, 15 carries and 5 of them resulted in bad things. You had the lost fumble by Mostert, the lost fumble by Ingold, the failed 3rd and 1 by Ingold that resulted in the missed 54-yard field goal. And then twice on first downs, Achane had a -2 and Mostert had a -2. And what happens is those were in the 4th quarter. Now that puts you behind the chains. You're 2nd and 12 with Tim Boyle throwing. That's not good. And so these are things when you look at the run game, you drill down on the run game. Like, you can't take -2s on first down. I don't know whose fault that was. I've got to go back and look. But the run game can't put you behind the chains when Tim Boyle is your quarterback. The run game cannot lose those fumbles. The run game has to convert on 3rd and 1. I'm not picking on the run game. I'm just highlighting this is not your bread and butter. You're still a passing team. The run game, again, should be for balance, not sustenance.
Yeah. And what did you think of the field goal attempt? Would you have gone there with a 54-yarder? When they decided to do that, I thought the very reason they should go for it is the reason why they were struggling. You got to try to win that game. With 16, tying it up with Tim Boyle back there.
Right.
Even though, low key, Tim, he's looked okay in this offense.
Yeah.
Actually, I just didn't have faith in Jason Sanders, man, to hit that field goal. Did you think, okay, as it was happening, that was a good decision, or you would have went for it there?
I would have gone for it. I don't hate the decision. Sanders ought to be able to hit from 54. Was he 3 for 4 from 50 coming into the game? I have to check.
Something like that.
I thought he was okay. But having said that, and as a matter of fact, I talked to Jason Sanders earlier in the season, because you know how the kickers started off so hot from 50 yards and then it cooled off. But Sanders is also a golfer. I know this. And so I talked to him just casually in the locker room. I was like, man, the 50-yard field goal is like a 300-yard drive on the PGA Tour, right? That, like it used to be, oh, my God. And now it's just kind of the standard. And he was like, yeah, kind of, yeah. And so 54, he should be able to hit it. But, yeah, I would have liked to have seen them run it and try to get the touchdown to take the lead. You were running the ball effectively, but situational running, you're not a running team. But I didn't hate that decision. I'm not gonna there's some things that I could scrutinize Mike McDaniel for. That one, that's fine. That's fine.
50-50 there.
Yeah.
I would like to see what the analytics said. Maybe I wonder I think the analytics probably would have said I'm not a big fan of the whole analytics, but they probably would have said to go for it.
Go for it. Probably.
Yeah. Speaking of the running game, I think the big question here now is, with Tua back, how much do you think the running game dips? I mean, I don't expect them. I think I know your answer to this, but I don't expect them to run the ball 40-plus times, obviously, like they have the last 2 games. Do you think Mike McDaniel's learned anything out of this adversity with the injury with Tua, or do you think it goes right back? He can't contain himself. The stuff's open downfield. They're back to that.
That's the $1,000 question with Mike McDaniel and his play calling. And look, my colleague David Furones asked Mike McDaniel at the season-ending press conference last year, would you consider giving up play calling? He said, I'll think about it. I asked him at the owners' meetings in March in Orlando, you said you would think about it. He said, yeah, I thought about it. I'm not going to give it up. I'm going to do play calling. At that same meeting, I asked Andy Reid and Zach Taylor, two Super Bowl coaches who also call plays, what's the key? And both of them said it's midweek preparation. That's how you do it. You need to delegate some of your head coaching duties so that you can focus on the play calling. And I don't know if Mike McDaniel has done that, but I suspect that might be more of the play calling thing with him. Look, he had never called plays before, in addition to never having been a head coach. That's a lot on your plate. Has he learned anything? We'll see. But I think he's got a lot on his plate. What I'm encouraged by is, and I'm sure you're aware of this, in 2022, his first year, they were 31st in rushing attempts. His second year, they improved to 15th in rushing attempts. So he's aware that the running game is important. Of course, run game coordinator in San Francisco. Here's kind of the thing, though, and I hope that this guides him also. The Dolphins this season, they have 4 games with 30 or more rushing attempts. They're 1-3 in those games, including against Buffalo. So, again, I think Mike McDaniel knows he needs balance for the run game. I would be shocked if they depend on the run game unless they think they have just this huge advantage in the box or strategically or whatever. But I think you're going to see more of a balance. You'll see more attempts to go over the top and get them to drop that 8th man into the box. I think that's what the run game will be used for most against Arizona.
Yeah, it seems like it's funny. It seems like with Tua, they don't run enough. Without him, they run too much.
Right. I know
it's like you can't find a happy medium.
Yeah. We're never satisfied. Yeah.
Do you expect Jonnu Smith? I have the theory that Jonnu Smith's involvement is sometimes when you have bad quarterback play, the tight end gets the ball more. And I had that discussion on my last show with a couple of my buddies. And I said, look, I think this Jonnu Smith stuff, I think he plays the same, but probably gets targeted less because Tua, man, is gonna see those things like we said outfield. I always think the tight end is when they say a quarterback's best friend, and when you have a bad quarterback who doesn't read the field, the tight end always gets involved. So I think the Jonnu Smith stuff, the emergence, kind of was a product of that in a weird way. You agree with that?
You know what? I hope it's not. I hope that look. There were 2 things that this offense needed coming into the season: use of the tight end and use of the slot receiver. And when they play that 2 deep zone, I would like to see the Dolphins be able to say, all right, well, you can mess around with that if you want to. Take some Jonnu, take some Odell Beckham, and take a steady diet of it. And here's some run game for you. And now we're still going over the top, and we're going to hit Tyreek, and we're going to hit Waddle, and you can't stop us. That's what I want to see from this offense is diversity, that we will hit you in the head, in the gut, in the ribs, everywhere. We will just bludgeon you. And that's what I want to see. I want to see that balance everywhere. Run game, tight end, slot receiver, deep, intermediate, shallow, crosses, back shoulder. It's one thing to be creative with the pre-snap shifts and the motion and all that. Let's get creative in ball distribution and in who you're getting the ball to. I think that makes you feared and unstoppable also. So I would love to see Jonnu a bigger piece of the offense and a steadier piece. I don't know what's going on with OBJ. I don't know if he's going to come around this season or not. But, Braxton Berrios had no receptions, very few. He didn't play a whole lot from scrimmage. But I would love to see the tight end and the slot receiver become a factor.
Yeah, especially with the 2 high safety, how they're shelling them on double coverage.
Yep.
If Tua's got to realize it's open. I mean, where the field is open, I mean, not only open, I mean, you could drive 2 buses through it's wide open.
Exactly.
So I think maybe Tua's got to change his mentality. He's not try, even though you see it being open, maybe don't go there. Take that 8-yard pass to Jonnu, and Jonnu is athletic. He can make we've seen he can make plays. So yeah, getting back to the game, the Dolphins on defense, I have they've been a really good defense. Their only weakness, like you said, is probably the run defense.
Yep.
If Arizona, I guess, pulls an upset, to me, their strength, their leader of their team is James Conner. The guy's a beast. I think he's one of the more underrated backs that we don't talk about in the league.
Yeah.
And it seems like when they win, he's got 100 yards. He has success. Do you think that's the most important here to stop the run, like it always is, but especially versus this team, and especially with Kyler Murray. You never know which Kyler Murray you're going to get. Do you think it's stopping the run, not only the running back, but also Kyler Murray and his legs, and kind of have eyes on him and force him to beat you with his arm?
Yeah, you know what, George? That's a good question. Right now, I'm kind of leaning towards stopping Kyler because
interesting.
I'm not sure that the defense has allowed all six opponents to rush for 100. I'm not sure that the running game has beaten you. That's not what beat you against Jacksonville. That Brian Thomas touchdown from Trevor Lawrence, how he found him in the back of the end zone, I'll never know. That was a good pass. There's been some leaky pass plays and some leaky runs against Seattle. You blow the big one against DK Metcalf. James Cook has the run with Buffalo. It's been things like that. So I'm kind of thinking you can absorb 100 yards from James Conner. You limit Kyler and you limit the big plays. I think that's probably the formula. Although, I'm not 100% sure, but that's the way I'm leaning right now. I'm not too worried about like Marvin Harrison Jr. And by the way, this Dolphins defense, I'll say this: Zach Sealer, baller; Calais Campbell, baller; Jalen Ramsey, baller. I mean, Anthony Weaver, nice job, man. Nice job. Jordan Brooks has played every snap, by the way, at linebacker, every defensive snap from scrimmage. But this defense has really done a very, very nice job. I talked to Jalen Ramsey last week just about the defense and how he's being used. And, I think Weave is doing some really, really smart things with Ramsey, whether he's shadowing somebody, whether he's blitzing from the slot, whether, just moving him around and kind of using him situationally to snuff out the biggest threat. Whether it's 1st and 10 or 2nd and 3, you can use Ramsey to snuff out one of the biggest passing game threats on the field. I think what Weave is doing is brilliant. So I think if this defense stops Kyler Murray, I think they'll do a very good job in limiting the offense. Although I think Connor had 152 all-purpose yards last week. The dude is a beast. You're right.
Yeah, and I think I'm trying to see a path where the Cardinals, how they're going to be successful to beat the Dolphins, and it's probably keeping their offense on the field and keeping Tua and their offense off the field,
or big plays. If
big plays.
If
they're young. They're young. And look, the tight end's good. McBride's the guy you got to watch. He's really good.
Yep. You're right. And look, I think kind of I picked Dolphins 24-20, and again going back to Tua in those last 8 games, and they're averaging 18.4. If you score 3 touchdowns in this game, I think you're in pretty good shape. So I'm picking 24-20, but if the Dolphins allow 2 big plays, then they're on the edge. So I think for Arizona, the big play might be their best friend, and it might be the equalizer for the Dolphins defense. I think that's what they have to guard against most of all.
Yeah, and we also got to take into account, Tua could have a little rust on him, even though he's been throwing. That's
very good point.
We don't know. We don't know how he's going to look in his first game back.
Or how he'll react to pressure in his face. There's a lot to consider. There could be things going through his mind early in the game. So yeah, you're exactly right. And if nothing else, just kind of rust from being out for 4 games.
Yeah, it's an interesting game. When you first looked at the schedule, you thought, the Arizona Cardinals game at home. Yeah. Now there's so many storylines in this game. It's crazy.
Yep. This is the soft part of the schedule. 2 and 4.
Yeah. So you mentioned, kind of moving off the game. Now you mentioned that they were some of the things I'm going to talk about here, because I don't think this season is completely over. I'm not ready to wave the towel. No. We said it's a blessing and a curse that it seems like there's one guy who can run this offense at a high level, and the blessing is he's back, right?
Right.
If the defense continues to play like they played, the schedule opens up for them. This game, they got Buffalo, but then it's the Rams, Raiders, Patriots, and the Browns are not as good. The Jets, I'm not buying the Jets at all.
Right.
I'm not sure they make the playoffs, but I could see them bunching some wins together here.
Here's how I'm looking at it. So obviously they're 2-4 right now. You go 8-3 the rest of the way, you're 10-7. You're probably almost certainly in the playoffs. You go 7-4, that's 9-8, probably some tiebreakers, but you might be in. I see for the rest of the schedule 3 certain losses: at Buffalo, at Green Bay, at Houston. So that would get you to 8-3. And I say that because those are 3 quality teams, and those are 3 road games. That hasn't been good in the Mike McDaniel era. So if you say that puts you at 8-3, your next toughest game is probably San Francisco here at home, right? And they're, San Francisco is struggling. So if you lose that, 7-4, so you got to beat Cleveland, which Cleveland's not that good, but that could be a cold weather road game in December. Not good in the Mike McDaniel era. Same for the Jets. Could be a cold weather road game in December. I guess January technically. Not good in the Mike McDaniel era. So that's that's factoring in my little losses there to Buffalo, Green Bay, and Houston. But that's kind of the way I see it. It could come down to that Jets game. I could very easily see the Dolphins going into that Jets game. Well, I shouldn't say very easily, but realistically going into that game with 8 wins or 9 wins. And I don't expect the Dolphins to fall off the face of the earth here. They might beat Arizona 10-7. But I expect them to win these games. I expect them to beat the teams they're supposed to beat still, because they still have a lot of talent on this team.
Yeah, it would be so Dolphins for them to win 9 games, just miss the playoffs, and pick 16th overall in the draft, right?
My goodness.
That's the place that's the worst place.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I guess really for some kind of poetic justice, you'd have to hope that Tim Boyle throws the winning touchdown pass against the Jets and gets them into the playoffs, right? To get over the Black Friday thing.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I'm not sure how confident I am in that.
No. I think everybody would want Tua to throw that winning pass, right?
Yeah, How are they looking on the injury report for this game? Agba, is he looking to come? Holland and Agba particularly, are they? You gut feeling you think they're back?
I would think that both of them are back. But it's kind of tough to know where Holland is going to be and how much pain he's in, or how much movement he would get in the hand wearing a cast or a protective device, or if he could tackle. I would think that the big thing is, can you tackle? Not necessarily can you catch a pass or make an interception, but can you use the hand? Can you grab a jersey? Is it gonna do more damage? Agba, the bicep, I have no idea what's going on there. So he seems to be a fairly tough guy. So you definitely need pass rush help, right? We know this. Chop Robinson to kind of go down that road. He's proven to kind of be what he was in college, right? A guy who has a high win rate but doesn't really get the quarterback onto the ground. And they need somebody to get the quarterback onto the ground. Sealer and Calais have been great up the middle, but off the edge, Quentin Bell, Mo Camara active for the first time, Tyus Bowser, who they just acquired. These guys aren't getting the quarterback on the ground. I think Agba is the best at that of the remaining healthy guys. We don't know when Chubb is coming back, but I would hope and think that Agba gives it a go this week, especially against Kyler.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more on Chop. I don't know if you're familiar. I do a big draft stuff during the offseason, and I watched a lot of tape on Chop. He's somebody I looked at that position a lot because, obviously we kind of get into the draft. We kind of know the 2 or 3 positions they're looking at. And the same thing I saw on tape is the same thing that's happening in the NFL. And that's concerning for me. I know I kept hearing about the pressure rate, but he's not long. You know what I mean? I think that's part of the problem. He's not strong. He's not very strong. I saw him get seal blocked by Michael Pittman Jr. On the outside run on Trey Sermon. So, I mean, he's a young player. Let's give him time, but definitely against the run, he's a liability out there. Is that what you see with Chop?
Yeah, 100%. He's struggling most against the run because they're the win rate, then you would be snuffing out runs. He's and the better ideal situation would be if Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb were still healthy and playing, and then he could grow and learn. But if that was the situation, you might not have drafted him in the first round. He's got to grow up fast. They need him. And not to say that the defense rests on them. They're number 4 in the league again in defense. But if you could get some sacks and if you could improve the run defense, that would help. And Chop is instrumental in both of those.
Yeah. Guys, we're live with Chris Perkins from the Sun Sentinel talking all things Dolphins. Guys, take a second, hit that subscribe button, please help support the channel. It's much appreciated. All right, last few topics, and I don't want to take up too much of your time, Perk. I remember specifically you wrote an article about Mike McDaniel. Mm-hmm. He's on the hot seat. You were the first one. And then what was that, in the offseason or the last year? Yeah. Around that time?
Yep.
Early. And you got pushback for it.
Yeah.
I said when Tua got hurt, however, how many games he was going to be out, that this is going to tell me how much Mike McDaniel's grown. And to me, he failed the test, right? Whatever that means. We still got the rest of the season.
Yeah.
You wrote that back then. Now we're 6 games in. Where do you stand with Coach McDaniel as the head coach?
I don't think Mike McDaniel should be anywhere near being fired right now. I like Mike. I respect Mike. Mike is stubborn. And that's what surprises me is that, the backup quarterback situation is just ridiculous. And he's largely responsible for that. I don't understand how you go through an entire offseason and you have this big quarterback battle in training camp, and then you decide Mike White is inadequate. We're going to get rid of him. You need 2 healthy quarterbacks. You were just in this situation in 2022. Where Teddy Bridgewater comes in after Tua's concussed, he goes out. Skyler comes in, he plays a little bit, he goes out with the thumb. Teddy comes back, and then he had like a finger injury or whatever. You need 3 quarterbacks. There was no scenario in my mind in picking the 53-man roster where both Skyler and Mike White weren't both on this team, and it's because, again, it takes quarterbacks months to learn this system, to get the timing. You can't just bring somebody in, Tim Boyle, Snoop Huntley, and teach them this offense in a matter of weeks. And so I blame Mike McDaniel for that. Having said that, I do think that Mike is a bright coach. I think the player empowerment thing goes way too far, way too far. Mike needs to crack some skulls. These guys need to be held more accountable for penalties. I asked Mike, what do you do for these guys for penalties? And this was after, was it the Jacksonville game where Tyreek just kind of let the lateral just kind of roll around, or was that Seattle? Whatever game that was. The ball, it was a fumble and he just gave up on it. Yeah. Right. Correct. And so I asked Mike, what do you do in these situations? And he said, we show the video in front of the team, and Tyreek was very sorry. And I'm just like, dude, you need a TNT wall like Flo or something, dude. You've got to crack some skulls. And so, and I remember when he said, when Eli Apple was coming in and, him and Tyreek had some beef on social media in a game. And he asked Tyreek, is it okay for Eli Apple to come in? And Tyreek approved it. And are you serious? It's make a decision, quit empowering the players, make these guys do things, make them practice harder. I think that, my fear here, George, is that they're going to miss an opportunity that Mike is kind of, and look, Mike wants to build better men as well as building better players. He truly cares about the players. He really does. And I commend him for that. This is unusual. I call this the great experiment because I've never seen player empowerment to this level. I've really rarely seen coaches that care about their players to this level. Having said all that, screw all that. You're trying to win a Super Bowl. If it takes an enforcer, if it takes somebody who's not going to be their friend, that's what it takes. This is business. That's all this is about. It's about winning a Super Bowl. And I admire him for, wanting to build better men and all that. You've got to wring all the talent you can out of this roster. So I would like to see McDaniel improve on a lot of fronts, whether it's, cracking skulls on that roster, getting better with play calling, tightening up on the penalties, maybe cracking the whip a little bit on special teams and special teams coach Danny Crossman. But you got to tighten up this operation. Don't let this opportunity go by, because you've got a lot of talent on this team.
Yeah, as you were kind of describing him with the, player empowerment and wants to make better men, it sounds like he'd do better in college. This is not this is the professional level.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
We're not running a charity event here.
Right.
This is the NFL. Right. And I like Mike. Seems like a really good guy.
Yeah.
But can he change, Burke? This is kind of who he is. Like, all of a sudden, I don't know what goes behind on closed doors. I don't know if he gets on players behind closed doors. I don't know if but I don't know. Can you all of a sudden walk in and kind of change your personality and they won't look at you like, who's this guy?
You can't.
Right.
But there are ways to be more firm with these guys. Dave Hyde has told me stories about how Shula used to deal with these guys, and there was one player and who had made a mistake, and Shula called him into his office and he showed him the video and he said, "You messed up here. What do you want me to say in the team meeting?" And that's kind of what it is. Like, I'm going to call you out, and there's going to be no two ways about this. Do you want me to tell the team that you were just messing around, that you don't know what you're doing? Like, how am I? Because it's going to be explained. Like, you're going to be embarrassed in front of the team. And I think you need more of that. And not to embarrass the player, but to emphasize mistakes have consequences. And we aren't going to ignore this. It's going to be dealt with, and it's going to be corrected. And I think that's kind of what you need more of. So he should change. Can he? I don't know. But that's you don't have to be a hard ass and be fake. You just have to be firm and let them know that things will change, because we need to do this moving forward so we can win a Super Bowl.
Yeah, I just don't know if it's in his personality, but we'll see. All right, we'll end on this topic. Speaking of all the questions we have this kind of first 6 games of the season, Mike McDaniel, but I think this exposed more than McDaniel, the general manager, the backup quarterback, the third receiver. Yep. Even though the offensive line interior has been better, and they're not the reason they're losing these games.
Yep.
If anybody watched this show, no, I'm not a fan of Chris Greer. I don't think he's I think he's a middle of the road GM. I think imagine him on a team that doesn't have an owner who's willing to throw money and write checks.
Yeah.
He had a blank slate on this rebuild. A dream for a GM, right?
Yeah, look.
Yeah. And I guess speak on how you think he's done during the rebuild, and in any scenario, what would have to happen for there to be a change at that spot?
Well, Chris Greer's biggest fault is he has no vision. He does whatever the head coach wants to do. So whatever Adam Gase wants to do, whatever Flo, and the Flo thing, that was a rebuild, but Flo didn't play Josh Rosen, right? Flo wanted to win, and he played Fitzpatrick. You need to tell him, no, we're going to see what we have here in Josh Rosen. You've got to set a standard. You've got to have a blueprint. You've got to have a system, and then you recruit players to the system. It's what Baltimore did with Ozzie Newsome, right? I know you've got Lamar, but you are a defense run game team, right? And that's almost kind of what Philly is. That's how you won a Super Bowl with Nick Foles, because you had a system. You just inserted a quarterback into it. San Francisco, they have a system. That's what the Dolphins need. That's what you have when you have a strong GM, a strong front office, when you have a vision. This is how we're going to win games. So to me, the biggest thing is, I've called Chris Greer Instacart for Mike McDaniel, right? McDaniel fills out the shopping list and Greer goes out and gets the groceries. You've got to be more than that as a GM. You've got to tell the coach. And look, here's one thing that I said in the hot seat column is that if Mike McDaniel loses that Kansas City game, you should use that to get some concessions in the offseason. Tell them that we're going to have a power back. Like, I don't care what you say, we're going to have a power back, We tried it your way for 2 years in 2022, 2023. We didn't win a playoff game. Now we're going to do it my way, partly. Get a power back, get a presence like that. You did get the tight end. You did get, made an effort to get the slot receiver. He has played more big boy football, Mike McDaniel, but I think Grier probably should have demanded more concessions. Again, Grier hasn't had the vision. Here's the other problem, though, George, that, I had also said that I wouldn't have extended anybody. I said this in the offseason. I wouldn't have extended McDaniel, wouldn't have extended Tua, because if this thing doesn't work and you want to get a new GM, well, a new GM is probably going to want to bring in his own head coach. And a new head coach is probably going to want to bring in his own quarterback. And so now you could be, and I'm, really going out on a limb here, but if you get rid of Grier, now you've got to have a GM who says, well, here's McDaniel, here's Tua, you've got their offensive system, make it work. I'm not sure that they're going to like that, especially if teams are just playing two deep safeties and shutting down this offense. So it's a whole thing. So Grier, I'm definitely willing to give him till the end of the season. I'm not ready to make any midseason changes with the Dolphins. It's not there again. It's 2-4. You can get back into this thing. I expect that they will get back into this thing. But if you don't win a playoff game, everybody's job is probably on the line and should be.
Yeah. So you think for very least they have to win a playoff game for his job to be, for you to be secure at the very least.
To be secure. I'm not saying I would definitely make a change, but man, if you don't win a playoff game this year, I know you've had some adversity. Everybody has adversity. It's a bottom line business. That'll be 3 years without winning a playoff game. By the way, Mike McDaniel's record, 22-20. Including playoffs. All this talent, and you're 2 games over 500. That's not just on McDaniel. That's also on Grier. But 22-20, that's just not good enough. Not good enough at all. You really need to win a playoff game to, again, I'm not saying anybody deserves to be fired or will or should be fired if they don't. But man, if you don't win a playoff game, it's going to be a rough, uncomfortable offseason.
Yeah, that gets overlooked because the perception is they're probably, they would think they're better under that than Mike McDaniel. And you make a good point. I don't know what a Chris Grier team looks like.
Right.
I don't know how he wants to build. Like if you look at Detroit, they brought Campbell, they brought their GM. You knew what kind of football, you know what his teams look like. Line of scrimmage, physicality, all the things the Dolphins lack. All right. You said I think you kind of mentioned your prediction for this game. Kind of you're leaning towards the Dolphins here.
Yeah, I'm going Dolphins 24-20. And look, like I said, 3 touchdowns, and you're in really good shape in this game. I don't have a whole lot of respect for Arizona. I don't know if that's gonna, if that's gonna matter, but I just don't. They're not a good team. They're not a good road team. That west to east game is really rough. The Dolphins are a really good home team. The Dolphins have Tua back. Again, I expect Arizona to play the two high safety defense and prevent those deep passes to Tyreek and Waddle. But you got Jonnu, you got OBJ, you do have a running game. Use Jalen Wright, soften up this defense, and look, and you're going to take the shots with Tua, and eventually you're going to hit, right? So, and it doesn't have to be that deep pass. The 80-yarder to Tyreek against Jacksonville was what, a 30-yard pass or 40-yard pass, and Tyreek. I mean, he takes away the corner from one of the safeties. You can get big plays in many ways. Heck, you can get big plays on the run game with the Dolphins. So, but you got to get those 3 touchdowns somehow. But I'm optimistic. I would be shocked if the Dolphins lost this game. 24-20 again. It could be 7-3, whatever. But I'm thinking the Dolphins almost certainly win this game.
Yeah, I agree. And your 2 weapons can't have 2 catches combined for what is it, 16?
And 4 targets,
19 yards in that game. That can't happen.
Yeah, can't happen. 4 targets for those 2 is unacceptable. That cannot happen. And I don't think that will happen with Tua. I think, again, Tyreek, Tyreek leaves last game without comment. He's upset. I don't think that happens this week. I think you let the cheetah eat this week.
Yeah, I agree. All right, Perk, that wraps it up. Hey, Chris, thanks so much for joining me, man. Before we get out of here, let everybody know where they follow you, what you got going on, and the Sun Sentinel.
Yeah. So, you can follow me on X at Chris Perk, even though, I'm not very active on social media, but I do post my stories on there. And then, this week, I'll say this. I'm very excited that Timbo is going into the Ring of Honor. Tim Bowens, I started on this team, on this beat back in 2000. I did 2000, 2001, the first half of 2002. Then I went to cover the Heat for 10 years. But Tim Bowens, I love that era team. I mean, Tim Bowens and obviously Jason Taylor and Zach Thomas and Richmond Webb and Daryl Gardner. And I mean, so many, Aronde Gaston, OJ McDuffie, just Derek Rogers, all of these guys, just Twan Russell, Sean Wooden. Like, I'm fairly close to that team. There's probably like 12 or 15 of those guys whose phone numbers I have now that I could text them. Jed Weaver. And so I'm excited. I'm excited for Tim Bowens, man, and I'm going to write something on him this week. But that's really, along with Tua's return, I'm probably more excited for Tim Bowens, seeing him go up into that Ring of Honor, because it is well deserved. This is a backbone guy for those teams, a guy who did a lot of dirty work. And you talk about the strong, silent type, man. That's Tim Bowens. He's one of my all-time favorites. So happy for him, and I'm excited about that this week.
Oh, yeah, he was a bad dude. I remember that team very well, very, very well.
Yep.
All right, guys, thanks for tuning in. Perk, thanks for joining us, guys. As always, guys, stay Fins faithful. We're out.